Oh, really? Oh, it's been 20 years. Good morning and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom, folks. Let's try to get into the mindset of Egypt. Let's try to understand the mindset of the Egyptians. We've spent a lot of time recently talking about the mindset of the Greeks. But who were the Egyptians and what did they want from us? I mean, the Torah portion this week descends into Egypt. What? Did they only want the brick? Or did they want more? The Egyptians were a mindset. They were a sophisticated philosophy, far more than meets the eye. They weren't there just in order to, they weren't just taskmasters who were trying to subjugate the Jewish people. Maybe that would be the Roman approach. The Romans are just brute. The Greeks were philosophers. Remember, when the Greeks were conquered by the Romans might have conquered their territory, but the Greeks' philosophy and culture overwhelmed the Romans because they actually had a culture and a philosophy. The Romans are just warriors. So when it comes to the Egyptians of this week's Torah portion and why we make such a big deal out of Egypt, think about it. There's no other enemy that we have that we make such a big deal out of.
And you can never go back to Egypt.
You can never go, exactly, you can never go back to Egypt. You know that any Jewish community that's ever lived in Egypt has I love that, you're amazing, has resulted in catastrophe. Think about that.
No, Jews went there right after, the Cairo-Ganizas from...
And what happened to it?
And Elephantine.
Are they still there?
Of course not.
Right. So Jews have never been able to live in Egypt since the exodus from Egypt. I mean, they've lived there for short periods of time, but they've never been able to actually sustain continuous Jewish communities because, like Marty says, because we have elevated the sparks. We've done what we needed to do over there. But to put things into perspective, and this might be a little cryptic if you've not initiated with what I'm about to say. If not, then just let it go. There are 288 divine sparks that are embedded in this world. It's like a divine treasure hunt, to oversimplify things. God puts us in this world to extract and find, capture the flag, these 288 divine sparks. Of 288 divine sparks that were embedded into this world, how many were in Egypt? 202. 202. By the time the Jews came out of Egypt, and it says in the Torah that they cleaned out the land of Egypt, and it seems on a literal sense to be referring to gold and silver and vessels. I love how you're so into it and initiated. You're on the ball. I love it. So it seems on a literal level to be referring to that, and Chuck, you're right. But on a deeper level, remember the layers of Torah, layers of depth of Elanian, it's referring to the divine energies that were entrapped in Egypt. And you're talking about 202 out of 288 sparks. That was a hell of a lot of work, which we needed to extract from Egypt, which might come and explain a little bit why we needed to have such intense duration in Egypt. We weren't exactly there on the Ritz-Carlton vacation package. We were in heavy labor. And I want you to reinterpret that for a moment. Just think about that from a spiritual perspective. Let's go deeper than just the literal. On a literal level, we're thinking anti-Semites, they made us work hard, they try to kill us. But on a deeper spiritual level, it means that we had a mission to do, a very, very difficult extraction mission, like a root canal to Egypt. And therefore, we needed to be very, very, very heavily engaged in the labors. Instead of thinking anti-Semite and looking for someone to blame, think of ultimate purpose and what we were trying to achieve. Now, this doesn't condone the anti-Semites. I'm not trying to whitewash them in any which way, but I am trying to say that Egypt is a very, very significant part of our culture. And it's not, now Marty, admittedly, we have left Egypt and we're not allowed to go back there. But we don't stop talking about Egypt.
Rabbi, why did God give Egypt so many divine sparks?
Good question. Excellent question.
Good. Perfect segue. So why did God give so many divine sparks to Egypt? I mean, what's up with Egypt? Which is exactly what I'm trying to say. We spoke about the Greeks so much. We spent so much time talking about Hanukkah. But this Egyptian thing, we can never get past it. Oh, I was waiting for somebody to do the math. Good. 71% of the sparks. Good. So what's up with Egypt? Who are these people? What is this land about? What does it represent? And why can we never let it go? Just move on, folks. We left there 3,338 years ago. It's time to let it be. Lascia stare. Leave it alone, right? Why are we obsessing over it? 8 days a year? We go OCD, rubbing, cleaning, scraping, cleansing of all remnants of Egyptian chametz, right? And every single day we say, in every generation, it says in the Mishnah, B'chol dor v'dor, in every generation, and in every day, B'chol yom v'yom, chayav adam niras hatzatza, a person has to see himself as if he himself came out of Egypt. What's this obsession?
Weren't they extremely immoral?
Now, they were certainly depraved and immoral. Yeah, they were. But let's get a little more sophisticated. Let's see if we get a little more sophisticated. I'm going to turn your attention to the Chumash, to the Torah portion on page 322-ish. Yeah, page 322. Well, let's go to 321. Let's go to 321, beginning of the story, middle of the page, verse number 8. At this time, a new king who did not know Joseph arose over Egypt. According to one opinion, it was a new Pharaoh. Others say it was the same Pharaoh who was in the days of Joseph, but that he acted as if he never heard of Joseph. You know how you say that in Yiddish? Zu machen sich nicht wissendig. You know what that means? Zu machen sich nicht wissendig. It means to make like I don't know. I make like I don't know. Macht sich nicht wissendig. Right? Like, we just did this country a huge favor. Israel just saved earthquakes and victims or whatever else. And you just voted like this in the United Nations. They make like they don't know. So he said to his people, look, the Israelites are becoming more numerous and stronger than us. This is what the Pharaoh says. Let us deal cleverly with them. And the God who is very clearly involved in their natural fertility. You know how many Jews were being born at a time in Egypt? It's crazy. They came in 70 souls. They emerged 210 years later with approximately 3 million. If you do the math on that one, it's crazy. They were having sextuplets.
No TV.
Yeah, there's no TV, right? They're having sextuplets. It's very interesting. Less sextuplets, yeah. Are you surprised?
6 at a time.
What?
Medrash, whatever. Go ahead.
Rob, get
Yeah.
some,
But, I've always had a problem with this because I didn't understand how, with the Jews being that strong and that numerous, how they would allow themselves to be subjugated. And then I read the note that, which I think is very important, that it doesn't mean strong in numbers. It means that they're first to their innate holiness, which had become strong. Not necessarily that they outnumber.
How could they be outnumbering the Egyptians? I mean, the Egyptians were the dominant population. This is a family of 70 souls that came in last week's Torah portion. I mean, like 70 people came in.
But it says they became.
Yeah, fine, very good. So I like that. Good. So you say on a spiritual level, but let's go a little further. So lest they increase, and in the event of the war, they join our enemies, they fight us, and they go up out of the land, or even worse, they take over our country and force us to go up out of the land. Right. So this is Pharaoh's firing of the people. Page 323. They appointed draft officers over them in order to afflict them with the chores they imposed on them, and thus the Jews built up the existing cities of Pithom and Ramses, making them fit to serve as storage cities of Pharaoh. Now here's a fascinating verse, number 12. A verse that really represents the secret, the enigma of suffering. But the more the Egyptians afflicted them, the more God blessed the Israelites. How's that for a verse, eh? The more the Egyptians afflicted them, the more God blessed the Israelites. So they increased and spread. And the Egyptians were both disgusted and vexed over the increase of the Israelites. In other words, the more we were enduring pressure, the more we delivered. Right? Like what? Like the olive, right? Like the coal. You know what happens to coal when you put it under pressure? The first phase of conscripted labor lasted about 30 years, from sometime after the year 2332 until 2362. Now, seeing that this degree of slavery did not curb the Israelites' proliferation, the Egyptians enslaved the Israelites with back-breaking labor. They embittered their lives with hard labor, making them work with mortar and bricks, as well as with other kinds of work in the field. All the work they subjected them to was imposed with crushing hardness. Now, this is what part I want to share with you. This is now the philosophy of Egypt, which the Torah embeds. And torch wood, we're not talking about David, we're talking about Joseph. David lived much later, like 1,000 years later. We're talking about Joseph. And it was either the same Pharaoh or the next Pharaoh. The king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives. So Pharaoh's taking this very, very seriously. Not only, the problem was they tried to subdue the Jews through back-breaking labor. And they weren't breaking. In fact, they were multiplying, prospering. Not only that, you know what we eat charosis on the Seder plate?
What? blood of the,
Charos is blood.
Mortar.
Charosis is mortar, or the bricks, right? But there's another midrashic interpretation that says that the Jews, when they were enslaved, did not want to have children, which was Pharaoh's intention, to make their life so miserable that they wouldn't want to bring kids into this world. So the Jewish wives would come meet their husbands under the apple trees, in order to seduce their husbands, their broken spirited husbands, in order to inspire them to procreate. So the charosis represents the bitachon, the trust of the Jewish wives, the mothers who believed in a future against impossible odds.
They were the mortar. The women were the mortar.
Yeah, they were the mortar. Nice. So the king of Egypt now realizes he's got to take matters to the next level. He spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom, Amram's wife Yocheved, was called Shifra, and the other, her daughter Miriam, was called Puah. He said to them, when you deliver the Hebrew women, look at the birth stool. If it is a boy, kill him. And if it is a girl, let her live. Kill him, right? But the midwives feared, and they did not do as the king of Egypt had told them. On the contrary, they provided the newborns with water, and they helped the boys live. The verse continues. The king of Egypt summoned the midwives and demanded them, why have you done this thing and kept the boys alive? He was very worried about the boys. The midwives answered Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They're skilled in giving birth. They're like animals. Before the midwife would even get to them, they've already given birth. They don't need a midwife. They do it by themselves. God dealt kindly with the midwives. As stated in the next verse, he made them progenitors of the royal and priestly dynasties. Because the midwives followed Pharaoh's plan, the people continued to increase and grew very strong. So in other words, from these midwives came both royalty as well as came priestly dynasties. So Moses and Aaron came from this woman, from Yocheved, right? So Moshe is like the king of Israel, and he's also the priest. Because the midwives feared God, he granted them dynasties. Now, this is the verse I want you to see. Pharaoh then gave orders to all of his people. You must cast every boy who is born into the Nile, but you must make every girl live. What an amazing, cryptic, horrible, awful verse. That Pharaoh says, throw every Jewish boy into the Nile. Yes, Mordechai.
Was this where they got the plague, death of the firstborn?
Death of the firstborn. It wouldn't be only the firstborn; it would be all of them in that case. So death of the firstborn happens later, right? It's a Jewish infliction upon the enemies. Is there a measure for measure element here? Potentially, probably, yeah. But I wouldn't correlate it directly to the firstborn. Anyways,
Rabbi, this doesn't make sense.
yeah.
I understand why he wants the boy because of his dream, but the women are the one who give us children. If there was no women around, you would have no children.
Oh, so what does it mean? Like, why would he not kill the girls? Well, the reason he didn't do the boys, let me explain what you just said, is because the astrologer said that the Redeemer of Israel, who will overthrow Pharaoh, will be a male. So that's what he was worried about. But why didn't he then kill the girls? You ask a very, very good question, which ties into the original question, which is, who were these Egyptians and what did they want? And what's this obsession with 71% sparks? I mean, how much landmass is each of the world's continents? Think about that. Minimal.
Yeah.
Yet it's 71% of the sparks. Far outsized, right? So this ties in perfectly. Why wouldn't he just kill the woman and then there'd certainly be no boys?
So the interlineation says have to live as Egyptians.
Oh, so now we're starting to get into the mindset of who the Egyptians were. The Egyptians were not actually trying. They were not actually trying to murder the Jews on a literal level. On a literal level they were. On a literal level they were. But we're going to now dive deeper the way the Rebbe explains this.
70.7%.
It's close enough.
Close enough.
70, not 70.
Not 70.
Okay, so what were they trying to do? The Egyptians were here it is. I'm sorry. What?
Kind of like the story of the Greeks, where they want to immerse us into that culture.
Immerse us into their culture. This is where I'm going. Exactly. They were trying to immerse us into their culture. But what was their culture? There's a very defining characteristic of the land of Egypt versus the land of Israel. The land of Egypt has no rain.
Has no
Right.
Right.
Their water comes exclusively from
The Nile, when it rises, flooding.
August, September, right? They had the shaduf, like a kind of interesting water lifting concept that lifted the water up right? The water screw, right? Where they had the water lifted up. That's how they had to lift the water up in order to irrigate the fields, canals. A blessing, by the way. You know why Jacob needed to be buried in Hebron? Last week's Torah portion. Because Jacob, when he came to Egypt, remember there was 7 years of plenty and then there was 7 years of famine. He came in the second year of the 7 years of famine. So when Jacob meets Pharaoh in the beginning of last week's Torah portion, he blesses Pharaoh. What's the blessing he gives Pharaoh? The best blessing he could have ever given a super narcissist. The best blessing he gives to a super narcissist. No rain in Egypt. He blessed them that wherever he walks, the river Nile should rise up to greet him. How's that for a super narcissist, right? So wherever Pharaoh walks, he's the rainmaker. The water lifts up to the fields. Everybody wanted Pharaoh to walk in his field. That's right. So Jacob's brilliant, right? So Jacob effectively brought an end to the 7 years of famine, right? By supernaturally overriding them, right? So when he died, he knew people were going to turn him into a god. He'd be automatically a god of Egypt. So that's why he didn't want to be buried in Egypt. No, that was Joseph. That was Joseph. Yeah, you're mixing up. All right, and Joseph. Yeah. So let's continue here. So what happens here? What does the Egyptians want? In Egypt, the water comes from the Nile. In Israel, where does the water come from? There's no Niles. Limtara shamayim tishtemayim, from the rain of the heavens, you will drink water. How interesting. In Israel, you have to look up. In Egypt, you have to look down. That's the difference. That is the difference. That in Israel, you've got to be a believer because of the topography, the geology, the geography of the land. It actually is conducive to faith. Whereas in Egypt, it's exactly the other way around. It seems like, who needs God? We have our own natural resources, and that's why they deified the natural resources. They would pray to the weather. They pray to the sheep. Remember when? Right, it's the sun, right? The natural elements. So remember they prayed to the sheep, and when the Jews had to tie the sheep to their bed and slaughter them, these guys were horrified. They're like, "What do you mean? This is our God?" Because this is like their dollar bills. Their assets was what they prayed to. They didn't pray to an overriding, invisible, almighty, all-powerful God. What they prayed to was to their physical assets, right? So this is the culture and the mindset that the Egyptians are when they see the Jewish people, as the Rav points out, that they were spiritually strong. They wanted to break our spirituality. What did they do? They said, throw them into the Nile. Drown them in the Nile. What does it mean to drown them in the Nile? It means send them to Harvard. Immerse them in a culture which is so thick with atheism, so thick with contempt to anything sacred, that they will drown, they'll be suffocated from their spiritual oxygen, and they will not be able to find their Jewish balance. Let them be steeped into the Egyptian mindset. And what about the girls? Were the girls off scot-free? Why do you need to say, and the girls should live? What does that mean? Murder the boys, but the girls you could let live. You could just say murder the boys, and then it'll be obvious that the girls not. That would be an obvious thing to say. The fact that it says the boys you should immerse in the River Nile. The girls doesn't say let them live. It says tichayun. You can't even translate this into English. Tichayun doesn't mean let them live. It means to make them live. To make you be the ones making them live. In other words, you provide the education. It's effectively, in an interesting kind of way, it's effectively a very similar decree to both boys and girls. So raise the girls into the Egyptian mindset and drown the boys in the crushing, what's the word? I'm trying to think of the right word. Drown the boys in the crushing pressures of the River Nile. What's the River Nile? It's full of crocodiles, right? Hippopotamuses. It's an extremely dangerous place. So fill them up with anxieties. I mean, you're drowning underwater, right? Fill them up with so much anxieties that they won't have space for faith. And the girls just, as long as you raise them, they don't need the crushing anxieties. The girls just keep them in line, send them to our schools, send them to Alexandria and Cairo elementary, right? And middle schools. And automatically they'll be okay. And that is the Egyptian mindset. It's the mindset of saying then that I don't believe in anything more than meets the eye. It's a klippa mindset, Marty. It's a klippa mindset. It's a superficiality mindset, which means I don't believe in that which I don't see. I only believe in that which meets my eyes, which is why all visible. The gods are all visible. The sun, the moon, the rain, the weather, the day, the night, the sheep, the what? The Nile. You know what's interesting? Also, the Nile. Of course, the Nile is a big god. You know what's interesting that when it came to Moses' decrees, and the Egyptian magicians, the plagues, it says that when it came to the lice, they couldn't replicate the lice. Why couldn't they replicate the lice? Too small. It's not visible. The lice is invisible. It wasn't something they could relate to. They could only relate to that which they saw, to klippa. But something which is beyond superficial perception, they're not do with it. And that's why Moses shows up after the burning bush in today's chitas. When Moses is after the burning bush, yesterday's chitas was burning bush, and God sends him on a mission. He says, "Okay, go speak to Pharaoh." So eventually he comes to Pharaoh and he says, "God of the Jews has sent me here." And Pharaoh's like, "Who? I never heard of this God." He opens the book of gods and he can't find this God. Like which listing is he? Which alphabetical his first name, last name? I don't see this God. Never heard of your God. Lo yadati es Havaya. I do not know Havaya. What's Havaya? What does Havaya mean? Havaya is the name of God, which means infinite, right? Past, present, and future in one word. Hayahoveh is the name of God. The four-letter name of God we're not allowed to pronounce in one word. It's timeless. It's infinite. It's supernatural. Supernatural. They're like, we don't know what supernatural means. We only know natural. Where is supernatural? Where do I find this? He could genuinely not relate, which is why Moses says, okay, we're going to have a one-year college training course here. The course of we'll bring out the snakes, we'll bring out the 10 plagues. We're going to show you this God. We're going to show you that nature is not a thing. Nature is actually submissive to the will of Almighty God. And that's why Moses proceeds to do these 10 miraculous plagues in order to teach not only the Egyptians, but more importantly, the Jews. Just like Hanukkah, remember, the problem wasn't the Greeks. The problem was the Hellenized Jews. And the same thing in Egypt. The Egyptians are they're going to die. We don't worry about the Egyptians. The problem was the Jews who had been submerged in the river Nile for 210 years. This is the problem. That's what needs the education. That's why Moses gives these, seriously, Moses, you want to take the Jews out of Egypt? He could have gone like this. And it would have been, now we're, some miracle. If you could bring, if somebody asked me the other day, Rabbi, I don't understand. How could it be that Adam lived 930 years? How could it be that this one lived 147 years and Abraham lived 175 years? Rabbi, I don't get it. This happened at the Kiddush. So I'm like, I don't have time to answer. So I said, listen. Listen. I'm like, look, I have to give a quick, impactful answer. I said, here's how I see it. If the God could split open the Red Sea, I'm okay with him living 175 years. You know what I mean? Once we figure out that problem, it's going to solve this problem as well. In other words, if you're okay with all the other miracles, just not the ages. God can do whatever he wants, but to make a person live more than 85 years, how's that even possible? Unthinkable. Impossible.
Don't say 85.
But even with that,
God forbid, I'm sorry, I didn't mean 85. I meant 185. I meant 185. What?
But even with that, wasn't it something like 2/3 of the Jews died?
Oh, so how
20%.
many? Now look at the parallel. Look at the parallel between Hanukkah and Egypt.
600,000.
How many Jews were Maccabees in the Hanukkah story? 5 to 10, 20, maybe 20,000. Tiny minority. Look at the Egyptian story. You have 80% of the Jewish people. They didn't believe in the Exodus. You know why? They couldn't get out of the river Nile. They were so oppressed with this crushing mindset. They couldn't free themselves from klippa, from superficiality. So when a Moses shows up and he says, guys, imagine I come to Mirasol tomorrow and I say, guys, everybody go to PBI. We've got an LL plane, Dreamliner jet. Mashiach is here. We're going to Israel. How many people you think we get on my bus?
6.
They're like, Rabbi, I got a tea time in 5 minutes. What are you talking about?
I gotta get my stuff together.
Yeah, I gotta sell my investments. I gotta
Who's paying for the trip?
exactly. What are we eating? I mean, can you imagine what would happen if I showed up in Mirsol? The plane's leaving, guys. Let's go. We'll go to Mashiach.
We have trouble.
They're like, Rabbi,
Robert,
you need a psychiatrist. Rabbi, you know what? Don't bother us. Call security. Get him out of here. With a staff, I show up with a staff. You know, come on. How many Jews will believe me today? Isn't it amazing? Now, in Egypt, there were 210 years in Egypt. We've been, my friends,
3,000.
well, let's say since the Roman conquest, let's say it's 1900 something, 1920 years. 1920 years, can you imagine? We're like life support. Our faith is like, we're barely conscious. And for us we have to remember Egypt every single day. Yeah, we got out of Egypt. The geography's done. Fine. Finished. Fait accompli. But we got the Jews out of Egypt. Now it's time to get Egypt out of the Jews. But we've got to understand who is Egypt. Egypt is the worship of the superficial.
Bondage.
Egypt is enslavement to that which meets the eye. What'd you say? To the visible. And Judaism, the revolution of Judaism is to believe in the invisible. To believe, to see the light with your mind, with your heart, when all your eyes see is darkness. And this is a struggle. Remember Tanya chapter 1. Our souls come from klippa. Our animal soul comes from klippa, from superficiality. We are designed factory settings to be able to be impressed by the superficial and to be far more impressed by the Harvard degree than it is by the good intentions of the young yeshiva student who's asking me to lay tefillin by him on the airplane, right? I just want to make a very interesting observation that the slavery did not begin until the last of the 12 tribes of Israel died. The 12 sons of Jacob, because all these 12 sons of Jacob all were in the land of Israel. They were there. Don't fool me, man. I remember the land of Israel. Yeah, I'm in Egypt now, but you can't pull the wool over my eyes here just yet. The next generation could. The next generation succumbed to the Egyptian mindset. The previous generation, you can't fool them because I know I saw faith with my own eyes. I saw the rain, right? Now, in our times, well, just like then, so who did indeed free the Jews? Who in fact liberated them? Moses. Moses was a guy from the outside, right? In the same way.
He was from the inside originally.
Yeah, okay. But I got just a minute left. So Moses is actually a guy he's the Rebbe of the generation. When we need to connect to the Rebbe of our generation in order to find our way to freedom. When the Jews of the country clubs are able to, the Jews of Palm Beach, when they're able to hold on to the Rebbe, when they're able to develop a relationship with the Moses of our generation, it's then that they say, look, I can't see the light, but I'm going to hold on to you so you can lead me out of this darkness. I've been grappling in the darkness for 1900 years, right? It's thick, it's hard, it's difficult. I don't know the way out, but I'm going to hold on to my Rebbe. I'm going to hold on to my God, and he will lead me out. God forbid we shouldn't succumb to be the 80%. And that is the mindset of the Egyptians.
Go ahead.